My Kokua. I'm Lila Moore, President of Kokua Council. We welcome Sarah Harris, Hazard Mitigation and Long-Term Disaster Recovery Program Manager, Emily McKinney, Climate Equity Manager, and Dr. Miko Linenheim, Project Coordinator for Center for Resilient Neighborhoods, also known as SERENE. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us. I think a lot of our audience are not familiar with your departments or your organization. Sarah and Emily are from the Honolulu City and County Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And SERENE is, again, the Center for Resilient Neighborhoods located in the Kapiolani Community Center. So if you could be so kind as to explain those, your organizations and your programs. I am going to hand the mic over to Rick so Rick can say whatever he wants to say. Thank you.
Anything. It's dangerous, Lila. So we started talking about doing this general membership meeting before the wildfires even. And it was really sparked by you guys, Dane and Sarah and Miko. Are you along with us in that strategic planning that we were doing? That we started, was that in April or May? Talking about climate change and emergency and how for Kupuna, how to be prepared. And I really felt that information was so valuable that we should start sharing it with the Kokua Council and getting some feedback from folks about what areas they see that we could be working on. And then of course, the wildfire happened. And a lot of the folks now Sarah and I have been talking for some time, and Miko came on, a little bit. Dane actually is a part of it as well. So Dane is on here as well. And so we've been talking about that, but many of the people I'd called to be a part of this, they can't make it because they're a little busy. And so, we've modified this some, and I'm hopeful that those of us that are on here are have your thinking cap on. What are your questions that you have of these folks? One, to kind of just for yourself, gain the awareness and preparedness, but two, to also kind of point out some areas that maybe they haven't thought about just yet, which is what the whole strategic planning is all about, is gathering information. So I think we've got, just a magical group of people, and all three of you guys have been a part of shaping this very presentation by referring me to each of you to be a part of it. So thank you so much. It made it so much easier to have people like you wanting to join us. I'm going to just share that I was Field Med Foreman, and I was stationed with Marine Infantry, and I was 1976 at K-Bay, Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station. This is the board. They all know this about me already, but I'm pointing it out because I was on the Quick Reactionary Force for 3 years, which meant when something went boom in the military, we were there. And as a corpsman, when something went boom, I was there, first responder like. And so I know emergencies inside and out. I also am mental health for 47 years. And one of the #1 causes of mental health issue is anxiety. And the anxiety is usually about worry about something happening. And the only way really to mitigate that, you can do the medication, but anxiety medication is really a PRN. You take it when you're anxious. You really should not be taking it ongoing. The best cure for anxiety is planning and having a plan and being aware. So when boom, this happens, I do this, right? So I always joke, and I've shared it with some of you, I'm in Paoa Valley, that if a tsunami's coming, I'm getting the car and I'm going up to the Poly Lookout and I'm not going to pay to park. That's my plan. We lived in Seattle, and I worked all over King County. And so for my wife and I, to help both of us be calm, I really had to share with her in each of the places I was, what is my plan if something happened? And guess what? We had an earthquake and the bridges to Magnolia closed down. And we had to actually exercise our emergency plan because we couldn't get home for a few days. And we ended up in a great hotel. It was like a little resort, but it took a bit to get there. And they're still dealing with that. The Magnolia Bridge is going to fall any day. They're constantly trying to reinforce it, and they just really do need to do something a little more expensive to fix it. So I've always had this mentality of, we know what we need to do, but for some reason we don't do it. And then boom, we have the Maui fires, and now everybody gets angry and everyone's pointing fingers. And that's not going to solve anything, right? So I'm hopeful that you guys can kind of shed some lights on things that help us kind of gain some awareness, and also start to think for ourselves what we could do. And anybody watching this video later can have that awareness and start to plan. So I'll leave it at that. And I think, do we have an order? I'll probably start with Sarah, I think, since you were the first person I called, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Harris.
Okay, well, thank you, Rick. I have a presentation if that's useful. Can I share my screen?
Please.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let
Do you have
me,
share screen for her, Lila?
Yep.
Or I could, yeah.
okie dokie. Let me get this set up real quick. And- Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I think this one. Okay. Mm. Okay, can you see my screen?
We've got it. It looks
Okay.
great.
Excellent. Hopefully, we're gonna try something here. I think I showed you the right one. So, okay. You all can still see the presenter screen, right? Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I have this really bad habit of pulling it up and then you all get to see my notes. So
Oh, no, we only see the screen. You're set.
okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. So thank you, Lila and Rick, for letting me be here today. As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Harris. I'm with the City and County of Honolulu's Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. So I'm going to spend a little time this morning just kind of sharing a bit more about our office because we are relatively young. So in 2016, the voters across Oahu really let the community leaders know, like, we want to deal with climate change. So we were adopted into the city charter. And in 2022, we were formally adopted as Ordinance 20-47. So this kind of codifies what our office's roles and responsibilities are. They cover a broad range of different approaches to dealing with climate change and climate change impacts. We have 6 key areas within our office. They don't correspond perfectly with these 6 key items on the screen, which is a little maybe confusing, but within our office, we have programs on equity, we have programs on policy, hazard mitigation, climate adaptation, energy. We also have transportation and mobility. So how that works is we're really working to green city operations. That's our first mandate, is to work with different city departments on helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're also working to collaborate with other city, state, federal agencies. We also talk with folks on the mainland to learn what they're doing as well, and if that's translatable here. We are really trying to include and promote resiliency across our communities, and I'll spend some time defining what I mean by resiliency a little bit later in this presentation, because we want our communities to be resilient, and that's what they want too, and that includes through planning, policy, programs, and projects. And also within this ordinance is the city's Climate Change Commission. So who are the Climate Change Commission? Well, they're a 5-member group, and they are made up of a leadership that really kind of help us translate climate science to our decision makers and our stakeholders. So some of the things you're seeing on the screen right now are different pieces of information that they've published that can really help you get a better understanding of some of the climate challenges we're facing here, not just on Oahu, but throughout Hawaii at large, because the commission really works across providing this information for all communities across the state. So if you do want to learn a little bit more, maybe a really great starting document would be the Climate Change Brief. It was originally adopted in 2018, but it was just updated in 2023. So it's going to have the most relevant information on some of these climate hazards that we're facing and what that might look like compared to global challenges from these hazards. It's looking at these past, present, and projected climate change trends. So it's a good starting point. Another is like the sea level rise guidance, especially if you live in a coastal part of our community. This is maybe a little bit more relevant to you than if you live at the back of a valley, but that's not to say you don't have family or friends that live on the coastline. So it's another good resource. Climate change and social equity. This is another thing that we're really trying to think forward as an office, and why I'm really glad that Emily is joining us today. She can talk more about that. And then another thing that we're really starting to work with the Climate Commission and think about is planning for heat. As our climate is changing, our buildings across the island may or may not have AC. What does that mean for the people living there? How do we rethink about how we design our spaces and our places? How are we making multimodal, so walking, biking, more comfortable for folks, especially we know certain demographics are more at risk for heat illness. The elderly, the kupuna can be. So we want to think about these things. So when we're kind of considering our work in our office, we're looking at these different shocks and stressors in terms of climate hazards. So what we mean by shocks are these can be just a single episode. So you can have a flash flood, you can have a hurricane, or you can have a wildfire, or you have these chronic stress conditions where sea level rise is an example of that, these increasing temperatures and heat. And additionally, you know, we don't really think about that as much, maybe more so now after the fires, but drought. It's becoming a real problem here on the islands. We maybe historically have thought we've had more than enough water, and some areas do, but statewide we are experiencing drought more often and for longer. So these are sort of the prisms that we use when we're thinking about our different documents, policies, and programs. So our office is really, we're not a regulatory office. We don't have equipment. We don't go out and do the projects. Instead, what we do is we work with other departments that do have these powers or equipment, and we help them think through what they can feasibly do through these different policy and planning documents. So the first one was the OLA Resilience Strategy. It was adopted in 2019, and it set forward 44 actions within 4 key pillars to really help make our community more resilient. So we have a vibrant and livable future. The next document that we worked on was our climate action plan. So it focuses on 9 climate strategies for the city to pursue between 2020 and 2025 to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And it was really focused on ground transportation, the electricity, and waste sectors. So the goal is to get our greenhouse gases reduced by 45% by 2025. This was relative to our 2015 emission levels. We are starting to work on our update on this document, because this one is required to be updated every 5 years. So there will be opportunities for community engagement and involvement as we're updating this. We're also expanding the scope of this plan. So we're going to be looking at other industries and as well as ways that our community can consider helping cut their own emissions. So this might be something to keep an eye out for. Another thing that we produce annually is our sustainability report. So this tracks the city's efforts to reduce emissions, improve resilience, and these other things kind of laid out in these different documents to just make sure we're moving in the right direction. If we're seeing there's areas where we're stalling or we're not improving, we can kind of focus and work with these different departments or ourselves on improving that over the next year. And then our final document is the climate adaptation strategy. So this one, it says summer. We're officially in fall now, but we're hoping to have this out this fall. We just have spent a lot of time getting community input. Maybe some of you on the call now were able to participate in some of the workshops and other events, but we will likely be having some open houses and other opportunities for the public to comment and see the plan. So keep an eye out for those coming soon. So like I mentioned, what is resilience? So this definition is pulled from our OLA resilience strategy, and we use this to sort of shape how we go about things. And it's that capacity for individuals and communities and institutions, businesses and systems to survive, adapt, and thrive, no matter those chronic stresses like we talked about or acute shocks we experience. So, I appear to have frozen. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to just share a couple of the projects that are happening across the office right now that I think would be of interest to you all or are relevant to this conversation. So the first is our building benchmarking program. So this ordinance was signed into law in 2022 by Mayor Blangiardi, and it establishes this program. So building benchmarking is this process of measuring a building's consumption of energy and water over time. So this is a really good way to kind of help businesses and these different building owners cut your utility expenses and at the same time also find opportunities for reducing your water consumption and your greenhouse gas emissions. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. So this year, the city's benchmarking program, our hope is to help with reaching our emissions reductions by 2045. So it's focused on multifamily buildings, buildings of a certain size. So right now, buildings over 100,000 square feet were required to submit their first report this year, so June 2023. We're hoping to expand that next year to buildings 50,000 square feet or larger will begin reporting by next June, so June 2024. And then the year after that, we'll have buildings 25,000 square feet or larger submitting these benchmarking reports. So June 30th of 2025. So it's exciting for us because, as you can see, a pretty large amount of our electricity consumption is through buildings. So as we're tracking this and working to lower these, I think that'll really help in this area. So on the screen, you also see, if you want more information, you can check it out at our website of resilientoahu.org/benchmarking. So another project that maybe Rick was mentioning a little bit, we've been working on is our developing a long-term disaster recovery plan. So this plan is, I think, maybe more important now than ever when we're thinking about what and how we're going to build back as a community following a disaster. So this plan itself is really just the first step in that. We have been working closely with the Department of Emergency Management here in the city. We've been working with other city departments, some federal and state agencies in our community to just really start thinking about this framework of what recovery would look like. And we're going to have some proposed adaptation and mitigation type steps that we'll be working on in the future. So we will be publishing the plan for public comment this fall. That's the plan. Always, we know plans work out the way they work. So that's our plan now. And we'll hope to have that available soon. So check out the website here if you want to get involved and just learn more about it. We also had a community-wide survey that just closed. So thank you to everybody that did participate and take that. We really appreciate it. And then when the plan is available for public comment, it will be available here, and we'll have a program so you can just do it online. So another thing that we've been working on, this is from our forthcoming Climate Ready Oahu, so our climate adaptation strategy, is this program called the Climate Champions Program. So this year was our pilot program, and we had organizations like Malama Learning Center, Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, the Key Project, Malama Loko'ea Fish Pond, as well as Malama Pu'uloa. And it was really great. So this kind of came about when they were doing community outreach on the Climate Ready Oahu plan. There was just a lot of public comment about we want to be more involved in kind of staying up to date and recognizing that the city doesn't always have the capacity or the staff to do these workshops. So why not work with our community partners? So the program is working with these different organizations to do a climate adaptation project. The city has partnered with these groups and submitted a grant through the EPA that we'll find out in November, I think, this year, if we're selected or not. We're really hopeful because it would provide about $1 million in funding to help maybe expand the program in the future and compensate some of the different participants. So it's very exciting, and keep your fingers crossed for us. We'll find out soon. So another project that we've been working on with our wonderful partners at Serene, who Miku's on the line with us today, is developing a network of resilience hubs across the island. So a lot of what I'm talking about today, like I said, we're a young department, so we're really in these first steps of a lot of the work that we want to do. And I think that's great because it provides a lot of opportunity for the community to participate and be involved. So this project just wrapped up, this Action 15 project wrapped up in August, excuse me. We're not even in October. I think I'm just excited for fall. So it wrapped up in August, and we had a tremendous amount of community involvement. There was 2 phases of this effort. It was really focused on, identifying potential hub locations within the different regional planning areas, really connecting with the community and building partnerships, and then also identifying what services and needs these different hub sites might need. And so through a community-wide survey and then over 100 different outreach opportunities, including 16 workshops facilitated by Serene and the Resilience Core leaders, we reached over 3,000 residents. And so I think this was just, I have to always stop and give a round of applause to our partners at Serene. It was tremendous. And so then the way to get involved is check out Serene. I know Mika will probably talk more about that. And then we're going to be putting the final report that came out of the Action 15 project up on our website soon, hopefully within the next month or so, as well as some other potential next steps on this project, ways for folks to get involved. And then we've also, our HUI that completed the project have put in a letter of intent to apply to NOAA's Climate Regional Resilience Grant. for about $2 million. So we'll find out in the next month or so if we'll be invited to formally apply or not, in which case we'll have to formally apply and then we'll see if we're selected. But we're really hopeful because we really want to use that to kind of keep growing on this and facilitating this both within our communities here and then potentially statewide. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Emily McKinney, and I'd like her to jump on if she can. So
Yes,
Emily, if
here I am.
perfect. Yay, thank you, Emily.
Sarah. I wanted to first apologize for my appearance. I'm actually on vacation and because I'm in the middle of moving. So I decided to keep my video off because I went on for a hot second and then I heard we were recording and streaming this and I was like, oh, nope, this cannot be kept. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity. So aloha, like Sarah said, I'm the Climate Equity Manager at the City and County of Honolulu. I wanted to touch upon what my role means in the context of the Kokua Council. Well, I was wondering how many of you knew of any of our plans or reports mentioned by Sarah, or even if you knew about our office or our work before today. And if you're shaking your head right now saying you didn't know about us, then that means our community engagement efforts didn't reach you. And if our community engagement efforts didn't reach you, then that means your voices and concerns were not taken into account in our plans or policies that came out of our office, which is a huge shame. And more than that, a huge disservice to the plans and the policies. So Kupuna hold, I'm preaching to the choir, right? Kupuna hold historical perspectives and lived experiences that are valuable to our work and the future. You have lived through decades of environmental change and can provide valuable historical perspective on how the climate has evolved. But kupuna also have unique challenges when it comes to climate change, and that needs to be voiced and considered in all our plans and policies. So I'm about to give some very generic examples of what I mean, and I hope that doesn't offend anyone, while it also highlights the importance of your input into this work and your input into my work specifically. Again, these examples are so simple, oversimplified, but kupuna have limited mobility or heightened vulnerability to extreme weather because of chronic illness, which means the way that kupuna survive, adapt, and thrive, just like how Sarah explained in the definition of resilience, is different from others. And our plans and policies need to reflect those differences. So that's where my job comes in. I would love to know how we, our office, can better collaborate with kupuna and would love to hear input on that later on. So I'm going to pass this back to Sarah and Miku. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So with that, actually, we're at the end of our presentation, and it sounds like there's time at the end after Miku presents for questions. So at this time, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I somehow put that behind me, so there we go. And I will pass it to Rick or to Miku or to someone else.
Well, go ahead, Miku. Take it, run with it. Introducing Dr. Lenentine.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so let me just get the slide deck up here. And I'll do screen share in just a minute.
And then at the very end, as always, folks, we'll just ask the questions. You can always put questions in the chat as we're going along too, though, if you have one that's just burning right now and don't want to forget it. Okay.
Okay, let's see. Well, there's the website. I'll pop the right one. Well, here it goes. Check it out. Okay, can you see it okay? All right, and we're unveiling one of the new slide designs from one of our students, actually, Lonnie Clayton, very talented graphic designer. So enjoy. There's lots of graphics in here, lots and lots. So I'll try to go slow. So aloha mai kako, everyone. I'm Dr. Miku Lenentine. I am the program coordinator for Serene, the Center for Resilient Neighborhoods. and that's based out of Kapilani Community College. And today I wanted to introduce Serene, but also this Serene model for climate resilience, and kind of the punchlines right there underneath it: community-based, intergenerational, dedicated to Aina, civic engagement, leadership, and service. And so I'm just gonna share a little bit about what we do and how that can support disaster and emergency planning. I have so much, I always do this, I always have so much to share, and I get really excited. I decided to put one of these slides in here. So this is our little map, what I hope to share with you. I'm going to introduce Serene a little bit. But since we're about resilience, it's this framing of how do we approach disaster management and planning from a really, I think, proactive standpoint. And so I want to talk a little bit about resilience and emergency planning today, and then especially honing in on resilience hubs, which Sarah Harris presented a little bit earlier, but we're going to dive in a bit deeper and give you that zoomed in neighborhood community level view of it. Talk a little bit about the role of education, learning, and adaptation, and how important that is for everything that we do going forward in this time that's continuously changing, right? So how do we build in the ability to adapt, shift, and make changes and learn new things we've never done before as part of that? And then especially what's the role, or kind of where is the place for Kupuna and older age adults in this space? And I want to really offer that it's more than just how do we make sure we're addressing vulnerability, how do we make sure voices are heard. It's more than just that. It's actually, I want to offer that it's about looking to wisdom and guidance, and that our Kupuna and older age adults have so much knowledge. I mean, so I know I'm, again, yeah, preaching to the choir here, but I just really want to emphasize that that's a really important framing for how we approach this. It's not just addressing the vulnerability, but it's actually also acknowledging the strength and information that's really present. So just wanted to kind of set us up for that. So a moment to introduce Serene. So it's CERENE, Center for Resilient Neighborhoods. And I'm still saying that if Sarah in 2016, you're saying you're new, then we're definitely new. So we've almost hit the 2-year mark. So we're a brand new research center, and because we started in COVID, our campus is still trying to figure out where we are. So we are a community-based research and civic engagement center. And as I shared below, these pieces listed at the bottom, these are kind of our main focus, but I want to share a little bit more about kind of the vision that we have. So the vision for our center is to be a thriving support hub at the Center of Community Resilience work across the island, supporting community resilience, environmental sustainability, climate change adaptation by providing a bridge between our campus, nonprofit, community-based organizations, government agencies, and local neighborhoods. And that neighborhood key is really important because so much work that's done, incredibly meaningful, important work, is not always located at the level of neighborhood or place. And that's really what we're all about. So what do? We a lot of C. So Serene, we convene, we coordinate, we collaborate, we support communication and co-learning with all of our different partners. And that intergenerational piece you'll see is so important to the work that we do. So we have 3 main focus areas. I'll introduce them a little bit here, but won't spend as much time on the first 2. But the first one here is we have a leadership program. So it's the Resilience Core Leadership. It's an award program. Students receive a $800 to $1,000 stipend every semester to work with us, hosting workshops in the community, doing research. They also can be placed with any different organization that has a resilience focus. And you'll see, well, what does that mean? Resilience covers a lot of different areas. And so that's one big thing that we do is we're working with this Resilience Core Leadership group. We have about 15 students every semester. And we also have our second program, which is new. It's about economic resilience. And it's called Transcending Barriers to Success in Education. And I'll unpack that a little bit more too, but it's a bridge program. We want to make sure that we have more students graduating with economic degrees, and specifically Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Filipino, and women students hardest hit, demographics hardest hit in the pandemic. So bringing in this more proactive approach to resilience planning and actually doing Aina-based economic resilience. If anyone has questions about that, we can talk about that after. And then our other big thing here, of course, is resilience hub planning. So we're all about the hubs. want to become a hub of hubs and help support that and just drum up a lot of interest and for a lot of hubbub. I gotta keep going with that joke. We also support a number of other projects and pathways. And I just highlighted energy and food and older age adults are the ones that are kind of popping up to the forefront more and more as we move forward. So I just wanted to name those as well. But the top three I have listed are kind of the main focus that we orient around. So these is just a quick snapshot, the Resilience for Leadership Award Program. As you can see, at Capilano Community College, we have students of all different ages and stages. So we actually have, who are part of the program, but then we have, it really is like fully intergenerational, even just within our Resilience program. And so, they get a certificate, they get training in community resilience. And then this is the Transcending Barriers, so TBSE, Transcending Barriers to Success in Economics. This is this bridge program. So it's just another pathway. And again, how do we bring in kind of more INA-based approaches to resilience, but specifically economic resilience? And that's one of the things is how can you plan for challenges, try to set ourselves up, planning for disasters to happen, even from an economics perspective, right? Maybe this means people have pop-up businesses, right? Like that there becomes a plan for these kind of things. Okay, and the last thing, resilience hubs. So I wanted to spend a little bit more time on this concept. Sarah touched briefly about resilience and the hubs. This is actually a bunch of pictures of different things that we face and will continue to face as a people, as a world. And we need to plan for them. So I think Rick, you said that planning makes us feel better. Whoever said that, yeah, that definitely. And Sarah laid out, the city has a lot of amazing plans in place. We'll talk about what does that really mean at the neighborhood scale? And then, but not just planning for this, hard planning is being really proactive. I just grabbed some of these pictures. They're not my finest collage, but you get the idea. So part of planning really means literally planting trees, right? This one on the far right is thinking about how do you do plant species, nature-based solutions for wildfire prevention. How do we start to incorporate those designs into our neighborhoods, into our families, and make sure that we're also supporting cultural resilience, music, keeping these things alive, even as we experience hard times. This is a lot of food for our brains right here. This is actually taken from the OLA Resilience Strategy. And I really like it because it just shows you a kaleidoscope of resilience, right? And planning for emergency response and natural disaster is not just putting hurricane clips on your house, which is still a really good idea. Please do that. But also we need to do all of these other things. So there's all of these different segments, health and wellness, economy, society, infrastructure, leadership, all of these things are part of what it means to plan for resilience. And here's our little graphic of a community resilience hub. It's I would like to say it's blurry on purpose to try to be abstract, to help you think about this could be many different things. But I want to take a moment to talk about how a hub, a central location in your neighborhood could be a place to go to in advance of disasters, but also during and following. And part of the idea is creating this net. It's not just a single hub. It's actually a network of different hubs. And let's see, I think I'll read the definition that we're using right now for what a resilience hub is, just so we can get clear on that one. So right now, we're saying a hub is a trusted gathering space. It provides access to services, programs, and resources and opportunities for community members. They utilize place-based, culturally informed strategies that increase personal and interpersonal resilience. And they serve families, neighborhoods, communities, and then they work together as a network for this island-wide level resilience. And then we're using this motto, big and small, move them all, so they could be a small pop-up tent that pops up during COVID. That could be a hub, right? It's a hub of people gathering to support in those disasters. But it can also be a physical building that has all the hurricane clips and it has access to water and it has all the places to recharge your cell phone and the energy security with the solar to refrigerate medicine or plug in dialysis machines, right? So the hub can range from all different services. But I'm kind of offering this model. So you have the model of the hub, all different sizes and all of these different planning areas. And they kind of, again, can serve as this net. So at some certain points, if there's a disaster on one part of the island, then other hubs can step up, right? So it's this, well, I'll show you the next slide. I think that'll kind of help. I was going for literally a net. So think about a net. We're absorbing these impacts and we need as many nodes in that net as possible. If you don't have enough, there's going to be big holes and people are going to fall through, or communities are going to fall through. And so that's why we want to have as many as we can to support the ability to bounce back, right? So catch us and help us bounce back. And then maybe we do such a good job that it's actually, we've got this. I don't know if we can reach that point, but that would be an amazing thing to aim for. So that's sort of the concept of hub and the concept of how they work as a network. Again, big and small, we need them all. It's not just going to always be a giant building, right? We need many different kinds to support each other. And Serene's kind of operating at the center. That's kind of our goal, is to help convene, coordinate these conversations, but we really want to keep our communities and our students at the heart of that process. So we're really facilitating and supporting these conversations with the community members that know what needs to be done. So how do we actually do this? And there's, I'm just going to kind of show some slides of things that we have done. And then what I'll do is I'll end with a bunch of different, we have 5 different opportunities for you all to get involved at various levels. So 1, this is what community-based research looks like. So we're working with the communities, we're having lots of conversation, but we have students, again, all ages and stages, and increasingly would like to have community members, volunteers, get trained to facilitate these conversations, to incorporate professional development. So the theme is resilience, the theme is disaster planning, but as we learn, we also skill up and are able to teach other and share stories. So this is one thing. So we've got this research that's happening, but the research is really in the shape of talk story to hear about what are the priorities and needs for each neighborhood. But you need to have really good note taking, right? A lot of times we talk and talk, but we don't always have a way to capture all that. And having a trained student team is one way to do that. This is an example. The text is really tiny, so I can read some of them for you. But just to show off, so students are helping the communities that they are part of plan for different kind of disasters and figure out what things that they need. But then they're studying at the same time and have the opportunity to present at different conferences, right? So they're actually learning social science research skills. They're getting a STEM education as part of this. And again, it's students all ages and stages. 2 of the posters that happen to be featured here are Resilience Talk Story with women and older age adults. This is one of the projects that our students did. And she is learning how to use spatial mapping and storytelling at the same time, right? But then, so the product benefits the community, but it's then the students actually get to benefit as well. And then the other one is looking at accessibility. So we had a student who was really interested. She had disability herself. And so she was really interested about disability access and taking a look at these things. And we have recordings of the actual presentations if people are curious. But again, that's going to be an ongoing thing. And that's part of the invitation, is how to get involved, is invite you to the next one. They love talking. So this is just in a snapshot. So in all of the workshops that we've had, you can see like equal number of older age adults at this table, and youth are, they're leading the process, but they're leading as in they're asking the questions, right? So they're in like a leadership role, but they're not necessarily in that knowledge generation role. So they get to sit around the table and hear what's going on in these communities, and also ask these questions of hearing about experience of older age adults with natural disasters, right? So they've never heard that. And many of them have never experienced it. So that's incredibly valuable part of this process. This is another example. There's Sarah Harris in the lower left corner. Love that picture, Sarah. You can see all different, again, everybody coming in here, having these conversations, and they're learning about how to use maps. So there's a fair amount of skilling up that has to happen for communities to be able to plan for disasters, right? So whether it's paper maps or online maps, learning about all of these different risk factors, but also just drawing from the local knowledge of like, when the certain stream in your neighborhood is going to overflow, right? But not everyone else has that knowledge. So sharing that knowledge locally, but then learning how to record it and incorporate it into planning. So again, these are the kind of skills that students are learning. And I want to, as I said, start opening this up to community members. So we have citizen science. So bringing that knowledge that so many of the older age adults have, but then also learning how to do it in these new ways is something that's incredibly valuable. And that's where that intergenerational learning can come in, right? So the students can really help the technology piece, but then they're missing the experience piece, right? We also went to middle school. I can't not show these pictures because they're too cute. So we brought the idea of resilience planning to middle schoolers, and this is what they came up with. So they had all these 3D diagrams. So the students actually helped us think a little bit differently about resilience planning and what it could look like in terms of these hubs. Okay, so here's where I get to the how can we help? How can people sign up? And so a couple of different ways. First thing, we have a brand new program. It is called, right now, it's sort of a pilot, Kokua Climate Mentors. And so this would be our first semester getting it off the ground. And I have a number of links, and I think what I'll do is I'll share them afterward, maybe during the question and answer question, and then a session, and then they can be sent out after. So these students, again, like I said, they're on the cutting edge. They're learning what they need to do to try to support their communities or neighborhoods. But they're still students, and like they have to go to neighborhood board meetings and make presentations. That's scary, right? So one of the greatest gifts that we can have is have mentors for these students. And you don't have to have any kind of specialized knowledge. It's awesome if you do, and we can match students per your interest. But really, it would just be meeting with them one-on-one on Zoom or in person, and you can pick the duration. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's twice a month, and just talk story with them about this process of what they're facing. So it's an amazing way to learn and kind of get insight into what's happening, but also they just need encouragement and talk about, things that make them nervous, and just a little bit of support that way. So that's the first invitation. The other one is join a workshop. So we've got 4 workshops that we're working on setting up right now. So one of the workshops coming up, we'll have one at KCC. We're going to do the mala. So we'll have it out there. We're looking at Loko'ea in the North Shore. We're also looking at still possibly doing the Waimanalo workshop out there. And then maybe one more, maybe the Japanese Cultural Center. We can get it set up so we can look at what really. And so these workshops, the findings go right back to the people that participated and get set up more broadly. And the focus that we're going to have for this next round of workshops is actually about Aina-based resilience. So we just kind of covered more broadly questions about resilience, needs, priorities, right? Now we really particularly want to focus on how does that overlay with Ahapua'a, Aina-based approaches to resilience. That's why we'll be hosting them at fish ponds and hosting them at the mala. But then we also want to bring in intergenerational learning, even with a stronger focus. And we'll be working with Dr. Imi Kiyota on this. She has an amazing model that first got in Japan called the Ibasho model. So I don't have time to go into what the Ibasho model is right now, but let's just say that it's been incredibly successful. Japan, Nepal, Philippines, Ivory Coast. And it's all about Kupuna taking the lead, Kupuna and youth, setting up their resilience hubs, essentially. So come to a workshop. We'll give you those invitations after. We have students particularly interested in doing kind of like part oral history, part mentoring as a top story project. And so we're looking for Kupuna older age adults who've experienced any kind of hardship. It doesn't have to be a natural disaster. It can be anything. And then they just sit down and talk story. And the students are collecting the stories and sharing them with the next generation. And so that is, I'll have some links for you to access, or you can just email me. And then another one is we're going to be launching a digital resilience journal. So again, this is how do you share? That's the thing, is you have things to share, right? So we have research to support you, but also we want to hear what you know. And so for this digital resilience journal, there will be some opportunities for you to contribute a column. We might do an advice section. This is our first semester of starting to mock it up, and we'd love to try to incorporate specifically older age voices and stories into that journal. And if you want to edit, we have some volunteer editor links you could use. So again, the theme is resilience. You will learn about resilience in all of the different ways, but then we also have all these different ways to connect to it. All right, and then how about some very specific trainings? Learn with us. So the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center, NDPTC. It's okay. I mix up those acronyms all the time. NDPTC with the University of Hawaii actually offers an ongoing series of programs that are free and available to everybody. But I'm not gonna lie, I think it's kind of challenging to access them. So if you sign up with us when we do it, we can actually support you guys in getting signed up. Make sure you actually get the Zoom link, help troubleshoot, because all of our students have trouble with it too. So we can do it together. So again, I'll have signups for you for those. So it's tsunami awareness, community resilience planning, hurricane awareness, climate adaptation planning for emergency management, and then community planning for disaster recovery. So really, really good courses all coming up that you can sign up for. And then that's the last one here. It's just want to keep up with our work. You can use your phone through the QR code or grab the link. We have a newsletter that we put out, and we'll put out all those trainings and just keep you updated with everything we're doing. So that's it.
Very, very helpful. So I get those newsletters. They're very, very useful. A lot of good information in there. So everybody gave some great information. I also just introduce that Kimberly has just joined us, and she does RSVP, the Retirement Senior Volunteer Program. And Kimberly, you might want to link with these folks for some of our folks to actually join some of this stuff. So, you know, could you just, I mean, just because we're doing this, Kimberly, could you share a little bit about RSVP? Because I don't know if everybody knows about that.
Sure. Hello,
Put you on the
everyone.
spot.
Thank you for letting me join you folks. So Retired and Senior Volunteer Program. It's under the City and County of Honolulu. We are under the Department of Community Services with the Elderly Affairs Division. And Elderly Affairs Division, there's two parts to us. You have your information and assistance folks, and they help to service seniors who are seeking out services in our community. And then on the flip side is Retirement and Senior Volunteer Program. And I work with seniors 55 plus who just wants to give love back into a community. No money involved. One of the great volunteers is right here, Rick Tabar, involved in so many things. I mean, Rick, I don't know, when you sleep.
I didn't last night.
And so that's who we are. I partner with different agencies, organizations, and the only reason why I do a MOU with them is all the volunteers who are with RSVP are covered with the volunteer insurance. And so that's the reason why with the MOU is so that if they're volunteering with the organization, if something should happen, then I can file a claim. Great people, inspiring people. I mean, yeah. Is there anything else?
Well, Kimberly, you organize some just remarkable things, and just anybody on here, if you're 55 or older, it's actually well worth just signing up for. You go at your own pace. You do what you want to. One of the programs that I've really enjoyed, and by the way, Kimberly, it's in this month's the September Generation magazine. I wrote an article on the Pen Pal program that we've done for 3 years. I assume it's going to start up again. And I wrote it because I was really touched because we went and met with the kids for the first time after 3 years, right at the end of the year. And it was chicken skin. I mean, I was so just moved. Well, we all were. There was tears on both ends of it. Just meeting with the kids and everything. So anyway, there's just a whole lot of things that Kimberly comes up with that people could actually volunteer for. And I'm thinking what you're talking about with Korean and some of the stuff that you're talking about would be great for RSVP. So want to connect you guys. You also mentioned a Basho Cafe. So Gary Simon and Barbara Service and I are on the task force with Clem organizing that with Faith Action. I mean, we're everywhere, by the way, folks on here, and I certainly would never do everything. But that we've been task forcing for a very long time because of COVID on that. And we're actually rolling it out with, correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara and Gary, it's the Catholic Filipino community or something like that. So we're starting with them. They've actually, we made food and shared it, and that's all it took. And so it's taking on a life of its own. And we're hoping maybe even, I don't know, maybe do something with Maui around it as well. But one of the things I've been saying lately, because it's really hitting, well, not just with the wildfire, but just the fact that this silver tsunami, that whether you like that term or don't like that term, it's been here a while. So saying, you know, all these task forces are great and wonderful, and I'm on many of them, but now is when we need to actually be doing things now. Because we're here, I'm 66 now. In 10 years, I don't know if I'll have all my marbles and be able to keep doing it at the pace that I'm at. And I'm doing it at this pace because I just feel it's now. And so instead of saying somebody should do something, we're all somebody. And so you guys all are. And again, it's the choir here. So I'm going to hand it over to Lila. Because the hand just went up.
Right. So I want to bring this all back to where we started off. What I'm interested in is these programs appear to be Oahu centric. And of course, all of us are concerned about what's happening in Lahaina and the plans there. I find it interesting that we have, I think, Dane, forgive me, but if you're a city planner, urban planner, if you're involved too, I'd like to know everyone's participation, whether it's from CCRS, did I say it correct, or CCSR and Serene. I'd like to hear from you what's happening regarding Maui. Thank you.
Do you want to go first, Sarah?
I was just
Yeah.
going to ask you that. Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So within the city, we're supporting, like, our role is really just working with our Department of Emergency Management, because the way it works within the like city hierarchy and framework is that we work with Maui's government. So our role is to support in areas that Maui requests support in. And so that's all administered through our Department of Emergency Management. And then the asks go out to different city departments to provide people, trainings, resources, etc. So our role has just been to support where we're asked to be support. We have connected with some folks on some things, and we're trying to help, especially with, right now we have a contractor who's focusing on long-term disaster recovery, and so providing some resources to interested parties on Maui where the ask has come from. So that's been our role so far to date, but we are definitely tuning in, and we're ready to support where we can and trying to also learn from this process, because I think every tragedy is an opportunity to learn, and we want to learn how we can so that we can help support better in the future and also better prepare our communities. So Miku, go ahead.
In a way, there's some similarities with Sarah that because we're based at Kapilani Community College, we're mostly following University of Hawaii system and Kapilani Community College's lead and how they're connecting. But what we ended up having, of course, is, you know, all of our resilient coordinators, all of our team, they all had different things that they were part of. So mostly my biggest thing was be like, yes, go do that, everybody. So in some ways it was all of my students had already been plugged in various capacities, whether it was we have chef and culinary students, you know, preparing meals, other people who had already gotten invited to be part of different groups. So that's kind of how it, honestly, that's kind of how it was for serving. And then the University of Hawaii system and Kapilani Community College has kind of their own gifting and different resources. And I also do have a list of resources and actions and things like that that could be shared if that's of interest to folks at this point too.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Please do share that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the other thing is the letter of intent that Sarah mentioned. We did put in for this. It's just the intent to apply so being transparent. But if we get this, it would be a $2 million grant to help coordinate and collaborate efforts across Hawaii. So specifically looking at Maui County, so Lanai, Molokai, and Maui as well. And so we were coordinating with the person that's in charge of standing up, I think, the resilience hubs across the island, at least for that area. And we had already had a meeting on the books prior to the fire to talk about the hubs. They're pretty busy over there, but there's a lot of energy for trying to set up resilience hubs over there to create better localized support and distribution of aid and all of those things.
Right. Emily, do you want to add anything? Just packing a box of it.
Sorry, no, yeah, I follow what Sarah says. We do have to just, it's kind of like a waiting game. We're ready to help, but we have to wait for the ask from the government. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay. Greg, you've had your hand up for a little bit. Thanks for your patience. You still have a question?
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, first a statement, then a couple questions that can be fielded from whoever wants to respond. First of all, I am on the board of the Kokua Council, and I also serve on the Waikiki Neighborhood Board. I'm the Subdistrict 2 Vice Chair. So I'd like to invite all of you at some point, if you're interested, to come and make a presentation about what you do and do some public outreach. We can get you on agenda. So you can email me. My information is available on the Neighborhood Board website, my email address, but I can share that with you through Lila. And the couple of questions that I have are, and I'm just going to throw them both out, and whoever wants to field them can. One is regarding the resilience hubs. Where would the funding come from for that? And the other one is in regards to reducing electricity consumption by 7% by 2030. And with respect to that, how do you think that could be accomplished with all of the EV charging stations that are being brought into buildings currently, new construction, and also existing apartment buildings where they're trying to bring in a lot of these EV charging stations? So those are my two questions.
Should I tackle the first one, Sarah? And then you can add to it since I won't have a full answer.
Sure, yeah.
Well, the one about the resilience hubs, the first thing I just want to emphasize is that the resilience hubs are community-led. And most of them are going to be existing buildings already. So it's not like a proposal to build a whole bunch of new buildings or anything like that. It's at least the first pass of all the workshops that we did identified 156 potential hub locations, which were most of those existing buildings or organizations that had something that they were working on. So that's part of it. But then the next question then is like, okay, where does the funding come to support, enhanced programming, shoring up the physical infrastructure, if it's something that can have a cooling station, how are we going to bring that in? So that is a question that then I will pass to Sarah.
So I think that's maybe not just the million, but the $1 billion question, right? How do we fund these and how do we get funding for implementation? And so this is something that the city is really thinking about. We were recently the recipients of a FEMA direct technical assistance grant. So that doesn't have any funding attached to it, but it is 36 months of technical assistance from FEMA, really focusing on resilience hub planning. Like Miku said, looking at these existing facilities and structures and doing some project development that may then be eligible for BRIC funding through the set aside and then the maybe competitive portion. It really just will depend on what comes out of this. FEMA does have a lot of challenges, their funding opportunities that really need to be thought through if these are appropriate to move forward with. And we want to make sure that we're supporting the communities to get the money to do what they can. There are other philanthropic funding sources out there. There's other federal agencies that are beginning to move into this resilience hub space. So we're also trying to find out what's out there and what can help support in getting these retrofits and other things done. So we're not quite sure yet, but we're trying to find out and we'll let you know.
I've been and we have been, and actually our next meeting will be at the Honganji on Pali, and they're kind of aging out and they're trying to find folks to use their space and be more a part of them. So that we've been working on for, what do you say, guys, maybe 6 months, but we've made great progress and we've actually become a partner with them. But last week I heard many of the neighbor islands, including here, Honganjis are closing down because they no longer even have members and there's space available. And so what we're being asked in this Honganji is to help make them relevant. And they're looking for things like this. And as Lila has pointed out, Buddhism is a philosophy. It doesn't have to be considered a religion. So it can be very non-partisan, and they are, because they're letting me in and partnering. So there's a lot of things going on with these shifts from not just the pandemic, but because people are aging out. And so I think there's some real rich opportunities out there to partner, but not having to spend money. And I don't know why, Greg, when you said it about the electric, I'm thinking that if you're going to be putting that electric in, it should be solar, because that's the whole idea.
Yeah, that would be
So-
great. If you guys could answer that question though, about how is the planning and strategy going for that when you consider that,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of these buildings are going to be introducing EV charging stations and electricity consumption seems to be going up,
Mhm.
especially if you talk about, you know, more heat in our environment. So how is that being mitigated or addressed?
Yeah, so I think that's maybe I'll counter a little bit in that we are finding, at least across the city, that consumption is going down, and that is through a lot of these different things like solar, updating the lighting, doing other just small improvements, finding issues. But the problem is that the price keeps rising, and that's due to a whole lot of things we probably don't want or need to get into on this call. So while maybe costs are rising, it's not necessarily synonymous with consumption. So we are thinking about that from a city perspective. That's one of our challenges, and I'm sure that will also be something we're looking at in our cap as we expand that. We are working and looking to do affordable, different like retrofit type programs, making sure that we're also working with policy, because that's a big one. If you want to put solar on some of these multifamily homes or larger buildings, you got to make sure that the policy lets you do that. So that's an area that we're looking at. I think, to Rick's point, having solar really can help cut that. Another thing too with EV charging, you're going to have to charge, and you're going to have to put the units in, so it's going to require electricity. But if we're thinking about ACs, there's landscaping, like Miku was mentioning, nature-based solutions and other lower cost actions we can take that don't require energy to help mitigate heat. So that's other things that we're looking at. It's like a form of adaptation. So I think it's a balance in that we do need to consider these potential increases of consumption to charge electric vehicles, but there's other actions that we can take to holistically reduce our emissions. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think so. I think the solar part of it is an important relevant element that needs to be looked at much more. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for the response to both of the questions.
Thanks.
So also, Dane, you're on some of these workshop things that are going on as well. Do you have anything you want to add to this? And I'll go back to Lila. I'm sorry, just thought your hand, Lila.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for the opportunity. I think Sarah has really said it, and I'm definitely an interloper on today's meetings. I wasn't prepared to present or provide any feedback, but maybe just to reiterate that we are, of course, looking for opportunities to share information. As Sarah said, things that are happening on Maui are certainly relevant to the long-term recovery planning that we're looking at right now. What kind of lessons learned could be applied, and what can we do to help make sure that recovery in the future goes as smoothly as possible. I'll leave it at that.
You know, and then Lila, just real fast. So in crisis response stuff that I've done that doesn't go very well, typically the top issue is communication. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. I'm not going to, and I would never wag a finger in the middle of a crisis, because I think right now it's all about solutions. But that's why the planning is so important. And so let me just give you an example. So Seattle Mental Health in Seattle, I worked there for 30 years. I was one of the safety people. I was the chair for any building I was in for safety stuff. We would rehearse for oh man, we had weapons come in, and we actually had shooter things live actually happen. So I actually stopped rehearsing it because it was happening enough that we didn't have to rehearse it anymore. This is with developmentally disabled. And the police department up at Capitol Hill, which took a big hit during some of the riot stuff, that whole area really made the news in some pretty bad ways. I won't even go down that road. They were remarkable in their response. Everything was fabulous. Then the elevator broke. And we had cerebral palsy folk on second floor on those giant motorized wheelchairs. And the fire department showed up and did not know how to move them. And I was furious. And I was a corpsman, and I would say, well, you got the people movers, right? You got to bring it in, you know. They actually left them with us and told us from now on, don't leave them at the elevator. You guys take them down yourself. So that communication was so important, and that was so frustrating for, I don't know if you've dealt with cerebral palsy, but they're generally pretty sharp people, and they tend to be a bit anxious because they have no control over their body. So we had our own crisis on our hand because the fire department in front of them is saying, oh, we don't know what to do. And they're, what? I got to get home. And the rides were downstairs waiting for them. And when you're doing handy vans, if you don't take the handy van when it comes, it could be 6 hours before it comes back. I'd be there till 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes with them. So anyway, that communication is just so important. And so I'm just going to put that out there just from experience, boots on the ground. That's the number one thing. And it's not that's not our department's job. That's not our area. It's got to be, how do we work together and how do we cross, pollinate to be able to do things that are needed when I would never as a foreman say, oh, he's not my company, I'm not going to treat him. Right? You just do it until you get help there. So that's just my 2 cents. Lila?
Thank you. I really appreciate what was presented here. My concern is implementation and the follow through. You brought up benchmarking, and I forgot what the correct data is, so I apologize. But I believe most of the residentials built on Oahu, at least, were built before 1990, which includes the high-rise multifamily, apartments, condominiums, so forth and so on. And you had this benchmarking study, and I know that it was for 100,000 square feet. Just want to know what the participation success was. Again, implementation, a great plan to do this benchmarking, but was it implemented? How well was it implemented? Or how was this compliance? Talking about compliance, a lot of us, I live in a high rise. I think you might be able to tell that the view is much lower than I am. But anyway, we have all these ideas about fire drills, but the reality is we don't do them. Okay, we have Jim Sean, our former president, and I went around in emails, including a few other legislators, about elevator safety. And although there is a agency that does elevator safety inspections, the data in those reports is inadequate. We don't know if with the past inspections, how recent the inspection was, so forth and so on. The government creates a lot of rules, but implementation, follow through, and then the data, that's so important to the consumer, to us. So, I'm not really asking a question. I think I'm making a statement. What kind of assurance do we have that all these studies are going to be something that is implemented? And then I did ask about benchmarking, so I'd like to hear. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll jump in on benchmarking. So maybe I didn't make this clear. It's not actually a study, it's an actual program. So it is a legal requirement for buildings this year over 100,000 square feet to report on their electricity and water usage. And so this has been a project, though, that has been worked on with our energy team, and I'm not the energy program manager, so the more nuanced answers would need to come from them. But I do know that they worked with a lot of the different owners of these buildings, and it was a very lengthy education, outreach, getting people knowledgeable on where and how to find the data, multiple years in advance of requiring them to submit the first round of information. And we're going to keep doing this because we're going to keep lowering the size requirements to do the benchmarking. So next year it will be any building 50,000 square feet or larger, so inclusive of that 100,000 square feet requiring this year. And then the year after that, it will be that 25,000 square feet. And so I think so far they've actually had quite good response due to that really heavy outreach, education, and involvement with the owners to get a lot of these questions answered. They've done focus groups, they've done a lot to really make sure that this program is successful. I think that there's also been a lot of consideration on some of the maybe like affordable housing and other areas where additional support might be needed because they've already got enough on their plates in terms of what they have to do. So we want to make sure that as the city we're supporting and we're really trying to incentivize this because again, it comes down to that also cost savings benefit. It's not just that we want to burden them to report their greenhouse gas emissions. It also benefits these buildings and the occupants because if we can find ways for them to save money on electricity, like I was mentioning, it's so expensive now, that's a cost win for the people that live there and own the space. And then same with water. I mean, right now it is one of the lower cost utilities, but given some of the recent events that have happened, they're having to look at the costs and those might rise. So it's a dual benefit to both the city, the community at large, and then also the owners and the occupants to get those down. So the implementation, we have thought that through on this, and I think you're right in that sometimes actually seeing these plans through can be a challenge, but that is something our office is really passionate about. We've been working to implement our resilience strategy. For example, our resilience hub is Action 15. So that was called out in the resilience plan to be something that the community wants to be more resilient. And we're working with Serene, and you can see that's really, the ball is rolling. Another is our long-term disaster recovery plan, that's Action 19. So we're really working on that. Our Climate Champions program was an action identified in our forthcoming Climate Ready Oahu. So we really do want to implement what we're saying we want to do because we really want to make our community more resilient. So I think of anyone else, Emily, if you want to add anything, I think that's, feel free.
I think Sarah, as always, it covers the entire answer and does it well. I like a small little nuanced comment I wanted to make was, we do have somebody on the energy team and her name is Marissa, and we hear her constantly on the phone like, well, okay, so we're going to open up the tab, and like she's very patient and kind, and that doesn't really answer the question about enforcement, but it does answer the question about equity in the sense that she's willing to walk through the whole process, and so the barrier of technology is taken away and lessened because of her patience and because she's doing technical assistance on her own. And that's all I kind of have to add.
I wanted to add one small thing about the community resilience hub piece. I didn't, Lila, I know you didn't speak to that one directly, but for that one, since it's a community-based research project, you can't stop them, right? This is good. The communities that they already are doing everything, so Y9 is already meeting to talk about fire risk, right? And food hubs are already happening, so basically the idea for community-based research working for the hubs is how do we amplify, support things that are already happening, and then especially help, folks on one part of the island learn about things that are working on other parts, right? So that's a big part of, at least for that Action 15 project, you can rest assured they're often marching, like in some ways I'm like trying to keep up with everything that they're all doing. So, and each region that we worked with, there's a point of contact for each region, and that they actually get access to all of the data. So they have everything, they have all their folders from, not that they want like hundreds of pages of transcript data. We actually worked with them to make it easier to digest, but they have it all. So that's one thing, at least for that project.
Go ahead, Lila.
Thank you. Regarding these resiliency hubs, Dr. Miko, I understand I was doing some research on Serene, and you are also a member of your neighborhood board, right?
So I just moved. I'm trying to decide. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I was trying to decide if I should stay with my one because that's where my dad is. So there's a little bit of a conflict point for the moment. But go ahead with your question.
So I live in the Alamoana Kaka'ako neighborhood, and I admit to not going to the neighborhood board meetings. However, I do look at the minutes, and I don't remember reading anything about a resiliency hub in our community. And so how are residents aware of where the hub is in their communities? Who apprises them? Is it through the neighborhood board? Is it through, city and county newsletter?
That's a
How
good,
will we work? Thank you.
good question. We did make it to that neighborhood board at one point. So yes, so we try very hard to go through the neighborhood boards as much as possible. There has been at least one presentation in every neighborhood board, but most of them have had two. Sometimes we only got the 3 minutes though, right? So we weren't always, those should still be in the minutes though, Lila. So I'm not sure, but even then, it's that 3-minute window and there's so much that happens. Even if you're at the meeting, sometimes it's easy to miss it. So that's one of the big ways. But then everybody who's participated has this newsletter. So that's the easiest way to keep following. And then the city and county puts out things, we have social media. But I was just chatting with Sarah. Once the report, beautiful report, becomes available, so you don't have to read hundreds of pages of transcripts and you can just read the bullets and such. We probably will do a press release and a much bigger kind of opening to make sure that we can keep letting people know about it. But a big part of it also was our community partners. So the community partners in the local areas, they're the ones that invited and got a lot of the word out as well. So that's some of it is also. I do have a particular place in Kakako I want to go. So at some point we might have a workshop there. So I'll let you know, Lila.
Sorry, I'm going to just jump in really quickly as I just raised my hand. So Lila, to clarify this too, right now we're still working with community members. So while we have a working definition of what a resilience hub is, we are letting the community lead this process. So right now, if you tried to go out and find a resilience hub, you probably wouldn't find one because this is still an ongoing effort. We want to make sure that as this rolls out, it's done thoughtfully and it's implemented right so that it has that long-term sustainability, and that with the city, we're a good partner and we're supporting where and how we can. And those are still conversations that we're having. Serene, same thing, that we're supporting these community-led and operated spaces, and that the community is really leading what becomes a hub, and it happens at the pace of community and partnership, like Miku always says. So I'm going to just steal that line for her. So I hope that helps clarify that.
Thank you very much.
So Barbara has her hand up. Yeah.
Oops. I wanted to ask Sarah, I think, I'm not really good on sizes of buildings. Can you give an example of any one of those, the hundreds, 50, 25, whatever? Can you give me an example of one?
Barbara, I wish I could, but I'm also not on the energy team, so I'm not as involved and I don't specifically know, but
Okay.
I'm going to put in the link right now, the benchmarking page, and it has a map on it. And so it'll pop you right to the map on the page and you can see some of these, because I'm also not the best at trying to visualize what that might mean and what that might look like.
Barbara,
Okay.
you know the condominiums in Kaka'ako?
Yes.
Most of them are over 100,000 square feet.
Whoa.
Most of the ones in Kaka'ako.
Wow. Okay.
So, and like Moana Pacific with their 2 towers, my guess, just off the top of the head, is Nauru Tower, where I live, is at least 300,000 square feet.
Holy cow. Okay. Thank you. And I wanted to say that I heard on the news yesterday that water, the cost of water is going to go up 50% over the next 4 or 5 years. Have you heard that, or?
I haven't heard anything to that effect. I only know that I think the Board of Water Supply is exploring increases just due to some of the issues with Red Hill and other maybe deferred maintenance. I don't quite know. I'm not involved in those conversations, but I think that they're going to be having some community outreach and other things to talk this through, because I think in my experience, they're a really good utility and they're definitely involve the community very well. So I know they have a communications team that might be someone to follow up with on that.
Okay, thank you.
We've had Ernie Lau come here and talk, and actually he's come to our Rotary also. And I've discovered that what he said is actually true. If you're using too much water, they cut the strength of your airflow, water flow. I'm trying to rinse the lanai off, and all of a sudden I got like a trickle. And, oh, yeah, I'm done. Greg, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a comment. Let me lower my hand first. Okay. So regarding the term resiliency hub, and I noticed there are a lot of terms that have been mentioned this evening, and you know, I respect your younger generation. It seems like all of you are younger, and we're here with an elder advocacy organization. So we're dealing with Kupuna that have a different mindset, and they're used to different terms. I have a suggestion. I don't think Kupuna would understand what a resiliency hub would be, or would even attempt to go and investigate a resiliency hub, but they might go to an emergency preparedness hub or center. Usually center is also a good word. Maybe combine the two, get emergency preparedness into the name of these hubs or centers, so that they have a little bit more of a definition of usability by the public. So that's my first thought. And then with respect to that, you know, as far as getting the message out, I know Lila mentioned that she hadn't seen anything in the meeting minutes. You know, I haven't really seen anything out in the public. I've only been on the Waikiki neighborhood board since January. And I know if you do want to get presented properly at these neighborhood boards, you need to get on agenda. That's something I just, you know, Miko and I just emailed back and forth. So she has my email address. But we need to make sure that if you're going to present this and go forward with it, that it's properly done so the communication flow is clean, and there's no question later that the outreach wasn't done properly. That's just, it's a pet peeve of mine, because we're in the middle of that right now with this pedestrian bridge over the Alawai that actually comes into play with emergency preparedness. And we have a community kind of in turmoil right now that's saying we weren't aware of this giant bridge they're planning to build. And they're stating one of the reasons that they need to build this giant bridge, 180 feet tall with, you know, suspension wires, is because of a potential tsunami. But if there's a tsunami, the residents are advised to go up, you know, higher than the 4th floor. They're not advised to go run across this pedestrian bridge. It's actually the opposite of what they would be advised. But there's a lot of mixed messages. And with respect to community outreach, while it was stated there was community outreach, there actually wasn't much. And it's been proven now that it was very, very limited. So I don't want you guys to get into the same boat. So again, I'm offering to get you on agenda for the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, and I advise that you get on agendas and get more public outreach that's noticed properly. And that's my statement.
So I might just jump in. This is, like Miku mentioned, we did try to go through the boards, and this is a challenge. You know, there's varying levels of activity and participation in the neighborhood boards, and that's both at the leadership level and the community level. And I think living in the age of social media, that compounds and complicates things even more with reaching folks. So we definitely want to partner with the neighborhood boards. We do try to do that in our projects. And if you guys could also, if you have other networks outside of that you can amplify our work on, we would really greatly appreciate that. So thank you for bringing that up, because we're really proud of the work we're doing, and the more people we can bring in to be a part of it, the happier we are. We love the transparency of it. So please share us out there. We are happy to do that. And I will say one thing, you know, the challenge with resilience hubs is that they really they do sometimes have this pre, during, and after disaster component, but it really depends on the community. They're meant to serve folks both blue skies, so during normal times, and gray skies, so after a disaster or during a disaster event. So this is where we've had this conversation of this challenge of, we don't want them to be just emergency focused, because they should be really more than that where appropriate. So thank you for the comment and the thought. It is an important one, the branding and the language that we use, so that it is inclusive. But we don't want to be too much one way, because then we might exclude other folks. So it is a challenge, and it's one that that's why we have this very lengthy definition that maybe still we might need to think about improving. But thank you. And Miku, if you have
Sure.
anything, please add.
Yeah, no, we understand. We want you to succeed. Go ahead, Miku.
Oh, I was gonna say, the neighborhood boards have honestly been, we've been working with them, I will still say closely, but the trouble is, a little bit of trouble, is the turnover. So it's been like a 2-year, and I had all the emails and I had it all set up to be able to email the chairs directly. And then they all changed and then the emails were bad and I was like, oh man. So this is a challenge of working at a neighborhood scale, which is really critical. I am, yeah, so for me at Kapilani, I'm like a 1-person team right now, but then I have all my resilience core leaders who train up so that they can go to the neighborhood boards and get that awesome experience. But that is some of the challenges, the 33, I think I count 32 boards, right? So yes, and I know, is your board the one that meets at the Waikiki Community Center? Or is your
It
one?
is, it is. And the good news for you is we just started a new 2-year session. So, you know, hopefully people that are committed to be on the board stay on the boards. So yeah, it's the Waikiki Community Center. It's the second Tuesday of every month. I think December they're calling off the meeting for the holidays, but
Well,
if you want to be on for October coming up, I would have to know like now because I have to get it into, you know, it's very soon. I'd have to get it in on that request. For November, we have plenty of time, but I think it's 10 days prior and you want to have a little cushion even to make sure it's prior to that.
did you say, I think that the report won't be out yet, so we should aim for November.
Yeah, so
For
I think November would be good.
For that one, we have a Carol Hoshiko who regularly presents based up of Kapiolani. And then, so she usually puts our things in there. And actually we've been working with Merle O'Neill. Merle O'Neill was one of the main contacts for us. We hosted 2 of the workshops in person at Waikiki Community Center. So, but I hear she doesn't go to the board meeting. So like, but we'll make sure that we get properly on the agenda for the next one. I know we did have one of our RCLs went in person and presented there, Tristan. So because I couldn't go with him, but he did a good job, I hear.
Yeah, one last comment and then I'll give it to Lila. Currently our board has just adopted WebEx. So before it was in person only. So now you can join by WebEx also.
Oh, that is helpful, actually. Yeah. Okay, thanks, guys.
Well, Sarah, Emily, Miku, thank you very much for your presentation. For us Kapuna, some of us are much older than 55. But anyway, for us, your 2 departments, your 2 agencies are new, very new. For me, even just to say, what is this? Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency. I hope we get used to the CCSR, which is a lot easier to say. Thank you for whoever thought of Serene, because that is so much easier and nicer to say too. But thank you, it was an education for us. It's, old dogs can learn new tricks, right, folks? But anyway, thank you very much. We appreciate this. It's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to terminate the meeting. Mahalo to everyone who joined us, taking time out of your busy schedules. I also want to recognize Kimberly Itagaki, who joined us. Is it Itagaki? I'm sorry, who joined us. Kokua Council invites you all to join us next month during our hybrid general meeting on Monday, October 23rd, when we hold our annual community forum regarding legislative priorities for 2024. Please look forward to our meeting notice. E malama pono, ahui ho. Thank you very much. Mahalo. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.